Yeah, sure. Well, I don't like to talk about like the big French line. Yeah. But so weird. In autumn, yeah. I'm doing a bunch of official math stuff. And we have where you might use subscribers for like municipality that subscribe to the something like experience and it's like clean benefit as well. But yeah, it's been awesome. After awesome. Okay, people how people so like temporarily the sex office, but once yeah, sometimes it's down.
Okay, welcome everybody. Sorry about a little bit of a delay there. Get this all straightened out, hopefully. Welcome to the March 9th Westchester Borough Planning Commission meeting. This is a voting session. Are there any, well, just run through the Alan Burkus here, Quincy Burrell, Steve Mitten, Thomas Doherty, Sheila Vaccaro, Matt Clapp, I'm Jim Sherry. Are there any comments from citizens on items not on the agenda? All right. So first, actually, it's approval of the minutes last February's meeting minutes. If everyone's had a chance to review them last week. Move to approve. Motion to approve. I second that.
You want? Is that where you take? Is this for minutes?
It's for February.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
I missed this.
Good news. Okay. Reports, old business. Okay. So first up is the Westchester University Master Plan Report. Just as a quick background before Mr. Nagel starts here, I just want to pull up our zoning. This in section or in chapter 112, which is our zoning. Under section 314. That's our planned university campus district. So specific to what we're doing and why we're doing it, I just want to be have a good, clear understanding that we're not looking at a specific project, or we're looking at a requirement that the Westchester Borough zoning requires of the applicant. And it's right in this section here under 112, 314C, in order to assure that development within
That's on the top. Next to the plus. Yeah, that's that.
Let's skip forward. The purpose and the intent of 112.314, after the effective date of section, prior to proceeding with any land development, the university shall prepare and submit to the borough a conditional use application, which will include a comprehensive campus plan, referred to as a university campus plan, which projects, anticipates, accommodates 5 years of growth and development of the university campus. Such plan shall be reviewed by the planning commission in accordance with the provisions of this 112(3)14. It also includes underneath it, the university campus plan shall be submitted with conditional use application and shall include the following materials and components. These are the additional reports that were also provided by the applicant. So they had Ewing Cole prepare a comprehensive master plan and included the additional studies. So I just want to at least start as a starting point. Mr. David, what have you to say?
Yes, good evening, Brian Eagle on behalf of the university. Just a couple of follow-up items from last meeting. Number one, I did submit the individual pages that we talked about, so you have those. So you can look at the individual pages side by side with the original pages, but you also have the full updated Ewing Cole report. So I took care of that. We had a discussion last week about areas shown on the Chester Valley plan that are not within the PUC district. We're going to amend that plan so that the approved master plan doesn't have any areas that are not located within the PUC, even though the Ewing Cole master plan report includes some recommendations for areas like, acquire this property square off your campus, or other has recommendations for College Arm. That's not in the PUC. That's just a recommendation for renovation. But nevertheless, we'll revise the plan so that the approved master plan only includes areas located within the PUC. So there's no confusion about that. And then I also wrote an email to Mr. Estes' office just confirming that we would agree to a condition of approval that the master plan approval only includes areas within the borough's PUC district, just to address that issue so there's no confusion in light of what we discussed last time. Thank you. Sure thing. And then Mr. Clapp had some questions from the summer, which we had never kind of formally addressed other than talking about it. And I did send to Matt today sort of a response from our planner that addresses all of the questions that he raised. And essentially, just to go through those, there were different, Ewing Cole received numerous reports, all of which are in the submission. There's a enrollment report from the Office of Institutional Research University. There's a student housing study from MGT. There's a traffic report and a parking study. And then Ewing Cole had to take all that information and make its recommendations in its planning report, which is the document that we recently updated that we talked about. So what Matt had asked about were some inconsistencies in the numbers. And what we provided were an explanation of what's going on there. Essentially, there was a 2000 and I'll say 20 or thereabouts MGT report that had a different recommendation for student or need, demonstrate need or demographic need for student housing than what was in their more recent report. And then Ewing Cole had to take that and make a recommendation for what the university, it recommends the university offer in terms of new student housing beds over the life of this plan. That number is currently about 900 student housing beds. So that's the recommendation. That's the plan that's being advanced. We provided the detail to answer that question. And then we also checked with the traffic engineer. The traffic engineer used an enrollment growth assumption of like 0.19 as a factor. Now that doesn't actually match the actual enrollment projection, which as we discussed, effectively is goes up a tiny bit and then eventually just projected to go down. But nevertheless, because they assumed some enrollment growth in their numbers for purposes of parking and traffic, their numbers do accommodate the 900 student beds proposed in this plan. That's effectively a summary of the issues, just so that you're aware on that. And then we submitted last week, as we mentioned, the written response to the urban engineers review. And you should all have that in your possession. I have extra copies here if anybody needs it. And I think that's all I had at the outset.
Okay. We're trying to get us back to our meeting. So someone lost it.
While you're doing that, just for everybody's information, I did review the responses to my comments back from the summer. They were all very much appreciated, and I didn't see any issues. They were, as expected, quite honestly. I just appreciated the explanation of the evolution of those numbers, going from the 2020 study to 2025, between the traffic engineer and the other studies. They were fine. So it made sense. And I think we're good. I just wanted that explanation. So
and we will, and no problem. And we will include that explanation also in the testimony that's presented to council. So that sort of explanation is baked into the information that they're hearing from consultants to testify.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah.
Thank you, madam. I did read this. I think, I guess what I'd like to do is just, we did, just before the last meeting, receive the as well as the revised plan. So I just want to add a couple of comments based on that. I don't know if there's anybody else here that would also like to add it. There were a couple high level or bigger picture pieces that I'm going to at least start with. One is the intersection of High and Rosedale, even though it was likely mentioned as a clash point. That's from the borough perspective, that's probably the biggest clash point out of the three that you mentioned. Right? So I do understand that New and Rosedale and Church and Rosedale are also clash points. When I say that, it's where the pedestrians or the students of the university may clash with vehicles or drivers coming through the borough. Route 100 or High Street as that's traveling south, and that ability to go either straight or continue on, or make that left at Rosedale is probably the biggest place where you can hang up there for several lights just waiting to make that left turn. So I just like that to be included. I don't know if it's university or borough or at some level, that intersection is probably the biggest one that's a point of intersect there. And that wasn't really brought into it. I know there was a pedestrian bridge mentioned that the potentially at the new working sites, and there was some enhancements at New, but I'd really like to see the High Street and Rosedale intersection. And there's potential there, even if we can direct the student crossing it to the south side, cross High on the south side of Rosedale, and maybe cross Rosedale on the west side of High. At least it would free up that left-hand turn. But all the students and the individuals that are coming down south on High Street are trying to make that left. As soon as it turns green, the students cross. It doesn't really give an opportunity for those vehicles to pass. So I don't know if that's PennDOT, I don't know if it's borough, I don't know if it's university, but it's just for the sake of the safety of the students and the potential issue that might happen at the intersection. I'm sure we'll talk about it later on. That one was it just wasn't mentioned enough there, or at least in my opinion. The second one was, I did not previously realize as I was reading through this thing that West Goshen in their zoning has a no student housing requirement. All right, which is funny because West Goshen probably has the most land in the PUC, more so than in the borough. It seems like both the Westchester Borough as well as East Bradford Township are bearing the brunt of the students, not only on campus, but within the borough. That student housing showed 39 pages of student rentals, thousands of rooms and individuals within homes. That kind of, again, as one of those hot topics that from the borough standpoint, it's attainable housing, it's the quality of the neighborhoods, it's the protection of the residents and quality. I understand the university's been here since 1871, so it just predates all of us, but I think the idea here is trying to balance out the neighbor aspect of it, the quality of it. I said, what happens within the campus? That's really university stuff, but what happens outside of the campus starts impacting the borough residents And it's about preserving and maintaining the quality of life within those neighbors and the values of those residents. When we have that many either investors or individuals buying and owning those properties, some of those properties kind of sit and are allowed to kind of slide backwards a little bit relative to the preservation and quality of those properties. It's a significantly different situation than if we were to free up some of those houses and the younger buyers would get in there and maintain that property every day. So someone who's living on a property and maintaining a property, they're able to kind of take kind of a quality care. When most of these houses are around 100 years old, I think they deserve that kind of attention. But anyway, I just noticed that West Scotia doesn't allow that new students. I wasn't there for the negotiations of this thing, but I think that's more of a conversation of our pay grade for borough council and solicitors to have with West Scotia, because there's an opportunity there. Everything on the south side of Rosedale is in West Scotia Township. They don't allow students over there. I do know also that Wayne Hall used to be a residence. That's still on the north side of Rosedale. It's still within the residential district on the campus. So, but presently it's being used for a lot of miscellaneous uses, offices, admins, and so on. It was kind of dismissed within the report, the idea of reclaiming that as a residence. So about 10 years ago, that was taken off the books as a residence, therefore reducing the bed count on campus. But there is 92,000 square feet or a 9-story building sitting right there that as you drive by, looks just like a residence because it used to be a residence, but now it's office. So just as a recommendation or a suggestion, that's a real quick low hanging fruit. If we can relocate that 58,000 square feet worth of Westchester offices and academics, maybe there's some space in West Scotia that can absorb that. But that location for student housing, it's a no-brainer. It's a city right. I know there's 2 other locations for new norms, which I greatly appreciate, but this one maybe should be put back onto the books as consideration, reverting back to a residence for some appropriately located residence on it. Okay, and the other one was. Oh, the housing study. The housing study, the MGT. I'm sorry. The Welcome Center in the report was showing that down at the Sykes building. So just as an idea, I do like it at the location of the building. It makes a lot of sense when you're justifying it there. We also saw that in another presentation as a potential location. I do like it at the end of church, next to the potential green, next to the student center. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of parking to the south side of Sykes that I think any visitors or any, it would be a little bit, should be reconsidered as a good location for that Welcome Center, as opposed to the corner of Hyden and Roseland, which is a conference center. The housing study, MGT showed a need for another 2,400 homes. I'm sure that's what one of the things you referenced, Matt. But, and this picks it up around 900. So it is what it is, but I just want to at least bring up the fact that Wayne Hall there is a potential, and maybe we can look at that, or maybe the university can choose to include that as a potential opportunity to add some beds. Other than that, again, I thought the study was well done. I think to include everything. I think it's kind of a big picture, high level look, and just to be real clear, we're not endorsing or approving any specific projects. So anybody that may or may not be concerned about specific potentials on that property, they could all happen or not. But what will happen is what we're doing here and looking at is this is a conditional use. It's requiring of the conditional use that we review their comprehensive plan, which is the ultimate in transparency. This allows them to share their thoughts over the next 10, 15 years, but specifically what their emphasis is going to be in the next 5. It appears from their plans, and it's already under implementation, is to increase and improve the housing stock. So the number of dorms and the quality of the dorms, it's very clear within the study that that's going to be an emphasis. Whether that picks up enough or not picks up enough, but when we read all the way through that, that is understood, and we appreciate the university looking at that. So, Alan, want to start?
So much of this that we have discussed before, my concerns, and obviously, my main concerns is the student housing one. And I had offered a suggestion that we just land in a place where there's at least an exchange of information about the number of students seeking on-campus housing, which is not information that we get today. It's just one potential solution. I've offered it up a couple of times, and I just wondered if there was any response to that.
I think all of the information that the university has provided includes all the information that they have to offer in the context of this report. But I can check on that question for purposes of the hearing.
In the larger scheme of things, that's the thing that concerns me.
Well, MGT looked at that and did specific demographic studies that look exactly at that. But there's depending on what purpose you're looking for, there's different factors that go into it, and that's what Ewing Cole had to take all that information, synthesize it into their ultimate recommendation they made to the university, and that's out of all of that came the recommendation for the 900 beds. That includes a lot of different factors. Part of which is the time that it takes to do it, the economics that it requires to do it. So all of those things, the demand, the economics, the time, it all goes into the mix, and that's the recommendation that Ewing Cole has made in the report.
Okay, well, that is my primary concern. I have to believe somewhere there is some property within the university collecting the information about people seeking on-campus housing. They have somewhere also the information those are able to take care of. So I don't think this is really a big.
It's not that black and white now, because students are looking for off-campus housing and on-campus housing, and considering staying at home in some instances all at the same time. So it's not a black and white number.
Okay. Parking is important, but I think less of a concern. And you've dealt with it. Some of the things that you folks at the start, some of my other concerns were addressed. So are we still in a place where this is going to be proposed at a public meeting on the 23rd, and then we'll have an opportunity to know what those issues are and react to that or alter our suggestions?
The planning commission has to make a recommendation on the conditional use application. All of the testimony will be presented to Borough Council on the 23rd.
Okay.
So if you have a recommendation or something you want council to think about in the context of considering the master plan, you could put it in as part of your recommendation in favor of the conditional use.
Yeah. So in the past, we've had conversations about there being a public meeting, collecting feedback, and having the planning commission have a chance to become aware of that and build it into their recommendations. And that sounds like that's just not going to happen. Okay.
Well, for some of these things from our meeting with the planning commission going back to the summer, we did do that, and we addressed the comments from the urban engineer review letter. We addressed some of the other issues that were raised. Maybe some of the things you're asking for don't necessarily exist anywhere, but most of what's been requested, I think we've answered and provided.
Thank you.
I have no comments regarding the letter, but my one question is, do we know why student housing isn't allowed in West Goshen? Like, is it just that restricted?
I can't answer any questions about the intent
I know you're not.
the governing body in West Goshen. The only thing I could offer quickly as an explanation would be that both of the all three of the municipalities where the university exists, particularly the borough and West Goshen Township, zoned sort of for what was already there and looked at how the university is operating and tried to create zoning, especially when they did this update, where they wanted to see a master plan that included both the campus in West Goshen Township and the portion of the campus in the borough, and try to have provisions that would provide for the planning in the future, so they kind of know what's coming.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of this plan. But in terms of what specifically, other than trying to plan for what's there, because there is no
My guess was like,
existing housing in West Goshen.
my guess is more like just to not spread, like not destructive, but like just college students can be, I was in college a year ago, college students can be annoying. Yeah, it's kind of people in one area.
Well, that's certainly there were discussions and borough council at different times had basically said, we want the student housing growth to occur within the super block.
Yeah.
So that's what both the university was hearing and West Goshen was hearing from the borough, that we want the student housing in the super block.
Yeah.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate it. I had a conversation, somebody I won't say who, somebody associated with the university in Appling, all specifically, grew up across the street. Remember when it was the football stadium before it was Wayne football stadium. And they said they would have trouble marketing because Wayne Hall it was one of those, cinder block squares, and bathroom at the end of the hall. That's not what kids want anymore. But with a number of students who are desperate for housing, would there be an idea that, back to the market as a back to basics housing? I love the idea for hundreds and hundreds, primarily for this reason, and it has to do with the affordable housing. I was a teacher in the borough of Westchester, and there just aren't one other teacher who works at Henderson, who was who's resident. Everybody goes to not just West Whiteland, but West, all this place, West 45. Can't afford it. 37% of dwelling units, rental dwelling units are licensed. Student 37%, 1,800 are licensed. That doesn't bring into consideration the ones that have students that are not licensed. Part of the popularity, part of the marketing of, so because I watched the Olympics, part of the marketing of Westchester University is access to the it does put a hardship on the borough. Now, it certainly does for police reasons, and that's not my purview. But it does for attainable housing for residents. It absolutely does. And so anything to increase the amount of housing that is on the university campus, whether it's in the borough in the super block, whether it's down in East Bradford Township, anything to alleviate that pressure is going, that pressure on the housing market is going to free up residences for lower income, middle income housing. That is really my first concern. So everything I'm going to that's everything try to increase green policy rating. And if it has to go back, Miller's University,
close. But back where it was that, those cinder block cells with the bathroom at the end of the hall, it's not the, I have a suite and I have my own little kitchenette and a shared bathroom with, hey, spoiled, everybody's spoiled. But it could be, where the market is one of the back to basics and maybe a discount. Something to help the borough, help the students of the university.
Wayne Hall's a reasonable farm. But Jim, as you suggested, it was dismissed. It wasn't dismissed at all. It was very carefully studied by the planning consultants. And the conclusion was taking Wayne Hall from what it was converted to, which is administrative related non-housing space, back to housing is not feasible. So not in the life of this plan anyway. And so the other options were recommended for that reason. So it wasn't dismissed, it was looked at closely. Now, keep in mind, this is an aggressive plan with regard to student housing with 900 units. If you consider the fact that it's 5 years of planning and it's a plan that has a life of 10 years. And we sit here in this room tonight and we talk about and think about 5 years as being a long period of time. But when you work on the planning side and construction side and bringing these projects to fruition, and I think Nicole could speak to this too, 5 years is like this. It's not a long period of time. And so and you're talking with these numbers, you're talking an increase of almost 20%, 15 to 20% of total student housing on campus. So it's a big number. It's a big undertaking. And that's the recommendation, that's what's in the plan, and that's the direction that it's going. That doesn't mean that these ideas can't be continued in discussion and be looked at for the future, but for this plan, that's where we are. And that hopefully that answers your question about me.
But with one last follow up, that lack of feasibility that's has to do with the type of rooms that it would be, that's not the suite, kitchenette, shared bathroom, just the bathroom down the end. Maybe that, say back to the basics, but basis of the way dorms used to be. Something that doable, and if it would be at a discount.
Like many of these issues, I think there are a lot of different factors. I don't know off the top of my head exactly what they were, but if you ask Conrad, he can tell you.
Thanks again for coming in, and I'm looking forward to voting yes on the questions, but I did have a couple of a minute or two. I just wanted to, we have like one paragraph in the comp plan 2016 around student housing. So the abundance of student housing.
Where are you? Sorry,
Page 28. Thanks. So the abundance of student housing in the neighborhoods surrounding the university has resulted in a number of neighborhood planning challenges. The borough and the university need to work together to develop a comprehensive set of solutions to mitigate the negative impacts. A comprehensive strategy should include efforts to accommodate as many students as possible in campus housing, encourage faculty and staff to move to neighborhoods, and proactively addressing inappropriate student behavior in off-campus locations. So last week I referenced that initial thing. I didn't quote it, but this strategy should include efforts to accommodate as many students as possible in campus housing. You just brought up the faculty and staff one. I don't know if this is being considered, and as part of I guess I had a couple of thoughts. So as part of the recommendation, our town architect, Mr. Thompson, had reached out and he said, "Hey, I don't know that they saw my notes. I don't know his notes not here right now." But he was emailing back and forth. And when I went through each of the line items, and you saw that off the top, I think it all had to do with pedestrian connectivity and safety. And so maybe in the recommendation is just encourage, I mean, as we've been saying this entire time, this is a roadmap. Everything's gonna have to go through land development anyway, so we can reiterate there, but maybe to support our town architect and see the best possible use here. Maybe we have something that says, hey, in reference Tom's notes regarding pedestrian connectivity.
And we have that, and we'll have a follow-up, from Conrad on those issues to present, during the hearing.
Perfect. So, I don't know if this has ever been discussed, but per all the, comments, it's all about student housing. I can't remember the numbers you just gave there, but if there were a pathway, the borough would have to set up, I'm sure, to bind student rentals from homeowners, landlords. That would be an interesting way of creating goodwill with the borough.
And that's to do what, Tom?
If there was a framework within which the university could buy the rentals, I don't know what, especially not the homeowners, but the out-of-state landlords, what value, if they could get a cash sum, would they put on a rental license? It would just be an interesting thought process and maybe something to consider. That framework presumably would have to be a university borough partnership trying to figure out, hey, can we buy that rental, that student rental permit, which what were the numbers you gave? 1,500. How many? 18. And what percentage of our rents were? So 30% of, the rentals here, and so we feel, there's a lot of concern from residents about that. If there was a framework to buy up some of those, it'd be interesting to look at, is an absentee landlord, is 10 grand enough to buy that? Is 20 grand enough to buy that? And then if you came to the borough with, I'm buying up 40 of these things, and it is a significant amount of money, but I think that would be a huge amount of goodwill that you could win from residents and the borough. So just
Not buy the property,
negative, just the
just the license.
It's an idea to think of, and I think something that we should maybe talk about because there might be something valuable.
And that's just to give the ability to rent the books as a student.
That's right. So those are my only comments.
So that's something that Nicole and that's outside the context of this plan.
100%.
But that's certainly something Nicole and I can bring back to the university group and mention as something.
Just make sure, if part of the, and obviously you're not asking for anything right now, but if down the road, if there was an exchange, if there was a concern about privacy, what's the one across High Street? Something, College Arms, right? So College Arms, so where's the give and take with the borough in buying up 20, 40 student rentals, not buying properties, but just buying the rental ability. And the borough would have to work with you to figure out what that would look like. But then just to take those student rentals off the books would be a valuable move, I think.
It's a new idea. I never thought about it. That's something we can
That's it. Thank you.
Love that idea. I'm in Ward 5, which is right touching the university very much. However, because of the student rental license, there are no student rentals. And because of the parking permit situation, there is no issue with students parking it. Across High Street, where 2 and 4, it's the exact opposite, and we need to do something.
Right.
I was just going to talk all about this, but that would be a really beautiful solution to buy up those student rental. It gets taken care of in the community areas where there are not student licenses. They're all, gelled in those 2 wards, and it hurts those communities. Because we sort of elevated the property value so much that they're so highly, I think some of those properties that were not able to be purchased by individuals now can be purchased by individual homeowners, or turning into rental properties, which has happened over in my ward, where there are multiple lower income people living in a beautiful house and being decent neighbors, maybe not as well maintained as the owners, but sometimes they are just as well maintained. So that would be a really wonderful thing.
And just to be clear, this is only recording.
This is not,
Well, just to be clear, this is only recording student rentals, only what we know about. That doesn't mean that other rentals don't exist throughout the borough.
and I have seen, because I am located literally right there, I've seen many people try to put students in the house, but the borough takes care of it eventually. It takes time, but it's a managed system that borough council is constantly trying to improve, and they're making progress. It's not, nothing's ever been perfect, but it's just the way, how many students are right next to, like, they're just a lot there.
And from the students, there are lots of apartments that are not well maintained, that are, well, the store, all that stuff, whose rents are astronomical because they are student specific. The students aren't being concerned by it.
No, and so many of these are out of state landlords. I think if there's a villain in this situation, it's the absentee landlords.
Now, what I really want to talk about is, yes, I want as much on-campus housing as we could possibly get, because the students need to be. Then, like, first and foremost, personally, Ward 5 is going to be burdened by that many bodies, and council needs to figure out how to manage that so that Ward 5 is not just a weird wasteland of a few neighbors and a bunch of dorms that are maybe or not occupied. But anything we can do to get student housing would be, and of course I want more in discussion, but just because they have land, that's it. And then I want public transportation for those kids back and forth.
Thank you. I don't have anything to add to all the comments that my colleagues have made. I guess my one question is, and I think, well, you touched on this a little bit, Brian, but the responses to urban engineers' comments, all of them include, well, not all, most of them include a note that says noted, and as future iterations updates are provided, yada, 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 will be addressed. I just want to understand, you mentioned how this is a long-term plan, but time will go by quickly. We obviously have the chance to review any salary applications and other things that are associated with the ideas and the projects in this plan. So what does the university envision as far as updates and future iterations go? Is there a plan to update this on a regular basis as projects come online? Like, what do those future iterations update this plan?
So the answer to the question, of course, is it depends, but generally speaking, I think what you could expect is that obviously student housing is a high priority, not just for you folks and for the borough, but for the university. That's the main event, right, with this plan, in addition to the internal updates to some of the existing facilities. And as Conrad said, right sizing some of those facilities that exist now. But so as that part of the plan progresses into land development, okay. At the same time, I assume what will happen is the university will focus on the projects that are on the plan, and there's a possibility that a project that's not on the plan can come up. So if that happens, I would expect that the existing master plan would be amended as an updated condition, as a new conditional use application, with a request to update the plan to add like a onesie twosie type of project. If this plan goes forward, and let's say we're 7 years out from the day that this plan gets approved by council, and there's a whole host of things, I would think at that point in time, that far out, you would see wheels in motion to do a totally new updated master plan that may include some remnants of this one that never got completed. And some of those priorities may have changed and those things might disappear. So that's kind of what I would expect to see, Matt. None of us really know, but does that answer your question?
It does, to some extent. And I guess my concern, urban engineers had a lot of good ideas. We obviously have a lot of concern for the planning commission. And also, I'm glad Thomas brought up, because I was going to bring it up anyway. Thomas Comida had a number of good ideas with his vast history of Westchester, thinking about this problem, or like pedestrianization of Church Street and all wayfinding. He had a lot of comments that were, I think would have been value added to the master plan if they had come in early enough or if they had been responded to early enough. I don't know. But those are things that I'd love to see in future iterations. So not just because a new project came online, we added it to the master plan. At that point, I would like to see some of those ideas then incorporated at that time.
Well, I think some of those things, both in the,
Or-
both in the urban engineer review and the committee review, I think some of those things would be appropriate to include in, as part of one of the land development projects. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, so I would expect, in addition to what the answer I gave you, in the context of some of those land development projects, I would expect that some of these issues would be addressed, and certainly some of these issues we're already addressing with the planning that we're doing in East Bradford, and working with East Bradford Township. Yeah, I wouldn't expect all of these things to hang out and wait for a future master plan. I would expect some of them to come in to play with some of those specific land development projects that are contained within this plan.
Okay.
And there are a couple of triggers, even if, say for instance, enrollment goes up by beyond 5% of what's projected, it should come back to another comprehensive plan. So there are a couple of triggers in the zone, our zone ordinance that would require that by itself. So just we should set out a preference.
Yeah, and Thomas committed does that in some of his comments. So I'm realizing that some of those we triggered no matter what, but there are some of those outside, like wayfinding and other little details that would be beneficial. So I'm glad to hear that, and we'll keep copies of those on hand for our, when we get those projects.
As will we.
Yeah, and that's good to hear.
Just ask, how is that enforced? How is this enforced?
Well, what's going to happen is, again, this is a condition of ours that they're required to put together this information as well as provide the additional other studies that they do. So when we're providing a recommendation, we're saying that the borough council accept that as what each individual project comes in, a land development is required that triggers the land development that has to come in front of us. So we would see on a land development, and so if they're putting up a new building, say for instance, when they tear down Lawrence Hall, right, and tear that down, that'll be back up in front of us, and we'll have the opportunity to comment on what they're providing. We'll be able to reference back to this, and we'll be able to make sure our consistency. So say for instance, it turns into a 2-story building with 12 suite rooms in there, and then we'll be able to say that's not what we talked about. So certainly, you know, it's like any contract, it's only good until you read. So
That's what I'm worried about.
I think the overall is consistent with a really well done master big picture high level perspective, and it does share a lot of the thinking thoughts behind where the numbers came from, why, what kind of thinking is in place. So it all kind of makes sense if you start really breaking that. There's a lot to guess. So it's just impossible to project that. You couldn't have projected that, you know, COVID brought everybody home. Everyone went virtual. So there may be a drop in it.
Okay.
So, but I think if there's any other comments.
I have a
Sure.
comment and a question.
Sure.
Mr. Clark, I just want to let you know that we are actually currently doing wayfinding and new assignments for campus, throughout campus. So because we felt that we need to do it, so maybe that's why it's not in the master plan.
Yeah.
Now, question for you, Mr. Clark, when you say purchase the rental licenses, just so we can understand, you mean not rent them, just purchase them and not allow students to get them?
That's right. I'm just thinking about the good, I'm proposing it as simply a goodwill thing. So what does the university get out of it? Nothing but goodwill. But if there's an exchange with, if housing is such a concern, and it's a huge portion of our rentals, the university, you know, if you were to go to an individual owner and say, I want to buy a student rental, what's the price? They're going to knock the price. But it's such a vast pool, you could probably relatively easily say, hey, we, the university, are willing to spend $1 million. We're going to pay 10 grand on each year. I don't know what you want. And then just be like, what's the market? How many do we have? 1,800.
Eighteen hundred beds, 1,800 units, 1,800 units.
Right.
So it might be.
And so you go out there to the 1,800, you do a mass mailing campaign, you say, hey, do you want to be part? We may never do this again. This is your one opportunity to get 10 grand. And it would be interesting to see what that response is. And I'm just proposing it as a strategy, since it's such a big concern for the borough of building up that goodwill. And so it would just be taking them off our books, that's it.
It's just removing the rental license,
That's
not the rental, yeah, and
That's
then
right.
it becomes a market rate.
Because we're thinking about the professors, and we're thinking about other people, we're thinking about sustainability, we're thinking about all kinds of things, opening up housing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Just
thank you.
Yeah.
And Jim, going back to one of your comments and really holding into Matt's question about the specific projects. You mentioned the intersection of High and Rosedale. My recollection, the last time that was updated, you were talking about that, what they have in there now, which is called pedestrian lead base, where it opens up the intersection for pedestrians and then opens it up to the vehicles. That was implemented with the approval of PennDOT during, I believe it was during the EO Bowl renovations, which was probably 12, 13 years ago, something like that. And also could have been associated with the school music. I can't remember which one it was. But at that time, there was discussion about what to do, what changes could be made. And that was the modification that PennDOT would allow, was that pedestrian lead base, and that's what you see there today. Now, there is a farther out on this master plan, there is another uniform renovation out there. So I would think at that time that would be looked at.
It's just a tough one because it involves PennDOT, it involves the
It does,
borough.
yeah,
involves
it's very tough.
So, but somebody needs to get the ball rolling on it otherwise. And again, this report just kind of, it was a very quiet sidebar. There's nothing is extensive. I say, for instance, New Street in Rosedale, which is already undergoing.
Yeah, my question was, I've been here only a minute and a half. Was there ever a consideration for a left turn signal at Church and Rosedale?
Oh, church. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were talking about.
I'm sorry, hi.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to have something else.
But should headed in east on Rosedale.
Both
church
directions.
towards-
There have been all kinds of different considerations and studies done and on that intersection. But what's been implementable, both in the context of projects that are happening and what PennDOT will tolerate, varies. But there's been a lot of study of it, both by the university and by the municipality and by PennDOT, including what PennDOT just did, which was that High Street corridor improvement plan. They have studies in there that they.
I think PennDOT really that's what we're
100%.
and it's really painful. So, yes, it's very dangerous, and it's to the students primarily, that is
Right.
in danger. I mean, the cars are annoyed because they can't turn left, but the students are just.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, the bulk of the residents that live in the borough understand the university's there and are cooperative with the students. But High Street or 100, you get a lot of people coming through that aren't necessarily used to
And
putting
they
their
are going so fast.
patience hat on, driving 20 miles an hour, when you get down to the campus 5 miles an hour, and just keeping an eye out. They're individuals that aren't helping the situation.
Can I just clarify that is not, through, 100 does not run straight through
Anymore.
anymore. And that was a big fight, I don't know how many years ago, but, they fought and they told the yeah, it goes, that's what's there, so,
I'm not sure if I understand your comment.
okay, High Street's not 100,
It's not designated.
Oh, sure, yeah.
right?
Well, High Street's still High Street, and that's the bigger traffic. It's even identified in here as the major, traffic.
It is, and I'm not saying it's still active.
Well, then,
Maybe
the
they're
old
worse.
one, the old one, is still 52, and it's also twice.
Yes.
But I think, my point was, we're trying to improve it for the student safety and for the, I'm concerned anybody, I mean, I drive about 2 miles an hour, so I don't want to hit anybody. So I drive about the speed I walk. So anyway, any other comments and questions? I think, let me start, what I was thinking, Alan, was, let me start the front end of it, and then what we can do is we can see if there's conditions that want to get added on to it. But I wanted to summarize that front portion of it, which was, it was fairly straightforward. It was basically, I'd like to recommend the Borough Council grant conditional use approval for its University main campus plan in the borough pursuant to section 112.314 of the Westchester Borough zoning ordinance, subject to future land development approval for each specified project, and each should include planning commission review and comment. Recommendation or approval of comprehensive master plan does not endorse or approve any specific project identified in the plan. And then if we have specific comments like satisfying Tom Committee's review letter or
Maybe at least reviewing,
I'm sorry,
or maybe at least reviewing.
review. Okay.
Well, yeah, I would just, my thoughts was, considering urban engineers and Thomas
Sure.
Committee's
Yeah.
comments in what we just talked about in the future, land development applications.
Do you want to include, Jim, the specific comments you made, for example? We consider the intersection of Pine and Rosedale, Forest Chain, Crosswalk. So,
I would like to include a study of that intersection and any future adjacent to that.
and then you're giving up on Wayne Hall.
I'm not giving up on Wayne Hall. I still, there's 2 other buildings, there's 3 other buildings that are being torn down and replaced with brand new dormitories. It is the area that's been identified in this plan as the residence hall. And so if you look at the campus, it was broken into 3 specific areas. There was the historic green, there was the Church Street, and then there was the residential hall. So when I'm looking at those residential halls and that academic building sitting in there, it makes most sense, use-wise, that in fact is an opportunity for another residence hall, whether it's that building or whether it's the footprint of that building or whether it's a new building. That's a whole nother subject.
I mentioned that you want to put that into condition.
Yeah, I was doing that in light of the fact that West Goshen doesn't allow student housing, but maybe they would allow new buildings or expansions of the academic, even right across the street or something. Some of those 4 or 5 of those buildings have been torn down there for green, but there's opportunity along South Matlack or along Rosedale, the south side of it, to potentially house some of those functions. So I'm just saying, when you look at it in a big picture, it's not my money, or it is my money, I guess. I don't know, at some level, I look at it and say, there's a great opportunity for more residents, and there's a great opportunity to locate those admin offices closer to the admin.
That's the only question was, do you want to consider that
Yes.
as a
And
condition?
certainly, yeah, sure.
I mean, Brian already said they did a lot of study on it. But
Well, sure.
So what's the condition that
they
you're
then
talking?
just reconsider that. I think you used the word reclaim Wayne residents.
So I would think that recommendation would be to consider Wayne Hall or the site of Wayne Hall for future student housing in addition to what's shown on this plan.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I mean, it was already considered in this plan, but if you look at it, no reason it can't be looked at.
And then you also mentioned the Welcome Center could be named David Sykes Hall. Is that in the plan now?
Yes, that's the only place
It's
that.
presently, it was in another submittal, it was in College Arms, but I'm
Yeah,
talking about that here.
The only place that the Welcome Center is proposed in this plan is
Adjacent to Sykes.
adjacent to sites.
Yeah, so in,
In sites or adjacent.
and I think that makes more sense. And like I said, I don't want to load up the east side of High Street when we just talked about the concern of crossing High Street. So,
And then the other thing I heard was wayfinding, heard it several times, but that seems to be a thing that should be in the.
But that's already, Let's just clarify that it's in progress right now.
We have permits for it, and some of the signage is already up. Yeah.
Yeah, they're actually working at a great pace. When you look on campus, some of the buildings that were scheduled to be demoed are demoed, some of the intersections to be improved are, some of the dorms to get that additional floor are already under construction. The temporary housing's already done, so a lot of this is well underway, so it's terrific. Matt, can you get it all straightened out?
Well, I mean, it sounds, I don't know what everybody else wants, or if anybody else needs, but right now, it's your piece, which I am not gonna type out, we're gonna send it to you.
Sure, okay.
And then we're adding conditions to consider the comments received from Urban Engineer and Thomas Committa for in future LD applications. And adding, reconsidering the intersection at High and Rosedale, or reevaluating, revisiting, I don't know what verbiage we want to use, and then reconsidering Wayne Hall in future student housing.
And then what we talked about at the very beginning, the master plan, the Chester Valley engineers plan should be amended to eliminate, we're only.
Yeah, I didn't say we were gonna do that, so.
Alan, sorry, I wanted to make sure.
That's okay. I do feel we need, the number one issue needs to be addressed, which is housing, student housing needs to be addressed, of course, right? So I would propose a condition being, getting a commitment from the university to fully disclose the on-campus housing waiting list count annually to determine if the proposed additional student housing is adequate. And then also I bring up adequate compensation to the borough to offset lost parking revenue.
When,
For college.
I think that one will, I think we'll take that one next week, so. Because that would just be a hypothetical.
Compensate with student rentals.
Um,
You come in with 50, you say, hey, I just bought 50 permits.
So a commitment from the university to fully disclose the on-campus housing waiting list count annually to determine if the proposed additional student housing.
And I think I explained that. I don't.
You did,
It's not that black and white. I don't know if there is a waiting list in terms of what you're looking for.
I think, it might be in reference to, a couple months ago, we did have a couple, groups of students, attend the Borough Council meeting and, share their concerns with their ability to find housing. Sure. And even the housing that they were able to find, how expensive it was. And
We know that students are looking for housing. We know that students are pursuing housing in different areas, both on campus and off campus, and maybe not even paying for housing outside of their parents' home. But that doesn't mean that there's a list that exists of what you're suggesting. So I'm just, all I'm saying is, you can't have a condition that asks for something that doesn't exist.
Good.
Which is the issue.
I do know, I see often on Facebook, parents posting my child, this number on the wait list, that number on the wait list. So there probably is something. I understood to your point that people are probably pursuing more than one thing. And if, you take, you do some analysis and we're all, we kind of extrapolate or not, or condense, I guess, what the actual number might be versus the number, but there are numbers out there. Because I see parents and kids posting all the time and under the frustration of, do I think I'll get in? So.
thank you. Alan, anything else?
I guess some reference to the, university's commitment tonight. Only discuss things within the PUC, only address things, to remove all references in the plan to properties outside the PUC.
I think you already put that in there, which is the amendment to the.
But they've already committed to it, it's really not a
I
point.
think it was already.
Debate, just, it would be good to have it in
But
there.
we will have it. Yeah, I think that's-
Okay.
That was the CD provisions.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good. Quickie, Steve,
I appreciate that, request. Wait a second. And one last question. On the far east end of Rosedale Avenue, behind Payne Fowler, the Payne Fire Hall, I think it's.
Another video was brought up.
There's, student housing back there.
is the edge.
To the edge, what's that? And that is in West Scotia.
That's in West Scotia,
So that's student housing, but it's
privately owned
privately, no,
student housing,
no affiliation with.
correct?
So I just want to clarify, from my knowledge, private student housing is allowed in West Scotia.
Just,
The
You're talking about,
university,
yeah.
so.
but there's also apartments right along Rosedale.
Well, yeah, but Cambridge is,
But that's what I'm saying.
it's not, they do rent to students.
Right. So there's a level that the university has two different housing groups that manage Western universities. Two groups within the center, but there are off-campus housing provided by private entities, which is just a development.
So we, in the borough, we manage those student rentals. In West Scotia, I think what they're doing is they're not really managing student rentals versus regular rentals, you know, it's just a rental or it's not. But they're limiting the university building new,
I understand.
Which- it
Yes.
seems insane to me, but that's how they're doing it, and we're doing the opposite, so.
More understanding, Ross.
Right. But they have students renting to help.
Yeah, but,
Whereas we have students in houses with permits and,
Stephen, any other comment? Thomas? Sheila?
one thing, Borough Council did reach out to me and say, thank you for speaking up for the borough. I mean, I think that's what we're all doing. So they wanted me to share that with everyone. So thank you for speaking up for the borough.
Thank you, Sheila. Matt? If you have nothing to read, let's try to read that right. We'll do one next time.
I'm
So,
good.
does everybody understands the?
I can review the conditions one more time. I mean, you read the
Yeah.
whole recommend approval.
Okay.
With, and then it's the conditions are considering the comments from urban engineers and Thomas Comita, can reevaluate High and Rosedale, reconsider Wayne Hall for future student housing, ensure the master plan is amended to only include portions of the PUC in the borough, and nowhere else. To gain commitment from the university to provide student housing request data annually to determine if student housing is adequate. And that, I believe, is it.
Okay, so that ends the motion.
And it's
Is there a second? Well,
No, I took,
okay. Now there's been a second. Is there any public comment?
There was the quad has had a number of articles that mention weed.
Okay, sorry, Lisa.
No, I was just saying that quad, the newspaper, has had several articles that reference the housing. Somebody thinks there's a wait list, because every year they have to put in equal houses, right? And they all can't get it, so at least there is that number How many?
I'm aware of what you're talking about, Lisa, what Nicole's referencing, that people talk about wait lists. But I don't think there are wait lists that Alan is asking for. So we'll look into it further, but I don't. That's all I can say. I know people say, like, I know students and parents say, oh, we're on the wait list. But
Well, they just specific number.
Yeah,
yeah, and I'm not, I'll ask, but I'm not aware.
But tell me how it works when they're applying each year for housing supplied by the university. They put their name on the list. So there must be at least that much that you say, because they say, you know, you didn't make it. So there must be that leftover, at least that would give us some idea.
There'll be a witness in the hearing who will testify about it, but it's sort of a changing thing, because you might have somebody who's on there looking for on-campus housing, and next thing you know, they decide to live off campus.
Everything's a point in time.
Yeah.
So, you know, give us a point in time as of this date, this how many people.
But it doesn't answer the question that you're looking for. The witness will be able to explain. It doesn't answer the question that you're looking for, because if you have, let's just make up a number, okay? If you have 100 students, okay, they put on the on-campus housing, right? And of those 100 students, if, again, pick a random number, if half of them, 50 of them, really know in their heart of hearts that they're trying to find a place off campus, and if they get an off-campus place, that's where they're gonna live. It kind of skews the numbers that you're trying to look at. And so you don't rely on that for projecting as a sole measure of projecting. You rely on an expert, which is who the university hired, to come up with all these numbers that we submit.
I think y'all just gonna wanna have something out of the number. You know, it won't be a perfect number, it'll be an ever-changing number, but it's a point in time. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And Carol.
Thank you. I just want to thank the board, the commission, for being so thoughtful in this process. I truly want to thank you for recognizing that the map was not the map that should be discussed, and any uses outside PUC are not under discussion. I live in a house that was built in 1895, so 130-year-old houses are in the Civic Action Southeast neighborhood. Some older than that on Walnut Street, they date back to the 1860s. So we appreciate your concern and ideas, and we will certainly entertain any ideas that you might want to throw our way. But we want to remain a neighborhood, and that you have emphasized that. I appreciate it on behalf of our members.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I'm sorry, Val.
Darrell, quick 5 to 6 South Wall Street. I'm interested in knowing when South Church Street would get closed, where are the buses going to go?
They would be rerouted according to the closure plan, which would be, part of that's in the plan now, and part of that would be developed in the context of working through that closure. And Conrad can answer that question, but he talked about it last week. I don't know if you were here out there.
Presently, Darrell, there is a cul-de-sac or a turnaround located at the end of South Church Street that's going to be in front of the new parking garage that's adjacent to the police station.
But keep in mind, the master plan doesn't include.
Yeah.
But that would have to be a whole separate discussion.
If that happens.
The plans always change, so I would imagine that when that closure, when you come back in front of this closure, whatever the plan that you're gonna get now is gonna change. Just to be all with.
So Conrad noted they have to coordinate with SEPTA, and it said that, and urban engineers had the same comment, and they responded the same way, so.
And not just that, there's a couple.
Yeah, not just that.
Part of it in there is to reverse the direction of the university. So they would come out that way for part of the plan, so yes.
And then once they get the University of High, south to Rosedale. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Okay. So we'll go ahead and put that vote down.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Great, very good. But thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Most of them.
Okay. Unfortunately, our director of building and housing is not here. Takes care of the next two. Update on removal of 97. My understanding is it's still there. I'm sorry to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get on to the fun stuff. I'm just gonna check and see if our procedures have been updated. I think we can do that ourselves. No, there's no go. All right.
Not just not up, but recording.
All right, we can keep asking. I'm gonna stay on the agenda for you. Okay, so.
I had the skills.
The other one is not on either, the 97A.
I did actually mail, procedures directly to Bill and Ann to see if I could, do an end run. It's still.
Check date.
I'm gonna have to try again. She'll get the card. Okay, next, we have two different pieces. One of them is the preservation ordinance, and Thomas, do you want to,
Yeah, so I put a number of hours into this, and I do have a presentation. We're fine for this, but I would like to say that yesterday and today I looked through all the other attachments that we have. And I guess my preference, if you're open to it, is to work on that in the working session of next week, just given the number of other, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different other presentations on other topics.
Sure.
So that, I guess that was
I
my,
think in consideration of that, I'm good with it. I think it's certain, I would like to, I think this, Quinty just left, but he'll be back. But, I do like that idea.
I talked about it, and part of it, I talked about it last week, and I think the big, change, I think, in my thinking that I wanted to propose to everyone this evening was, essentially, as opposed to, a lot change, really focus initially on, holding back on, let's say, a narrower lot width, which that's a number of our points, that we categorized last week, had to do with, Westchester size, lots. But given our concerns about architectural standards, really work with Aaron, to try to figure out this P&D, try to figure out how to, enforce these architectural standards, and only once we can get those in place, really allow for some of these lots, right? So allow for the development of, dwellings, buildings that fit that character, but have the CO on that before we can do any kind of lots.
Okay.
But that was kind of the evolving, I changed up everything that, first.
Okay. All right, I think that's fair. Thank you. Just to be fair to attendees, well, this is kind of the next portion is almost more of a work session portion, which are just subjects we've been bringing up, but we want to attack them a little more aggressively than once a month. So we have put together a list of maybe 37 items that are we'd like to see addressed. All of this is kind of towards some, like I said, some preservation, some strengthening of the ordinances that we presently have, that we wipe out some of the. So within that, we then, as a group, prioritize, and we're just kind of picking off those top couple priorities, and as we're going those, they're just discussion points at this point, and if we can move that forward to something actionable, that'll be the next step. So I think each person here has put together a little bit of a presentation, and spent a good amount of their own work and stuff. Does anybody like to go first?
Well, in my notes, I just did it. You made the orders. Cottage courts is first.
Cottage courts. Thomas, you're back on.
Sure, and I have 2 pages on that in what I was going to show next week. I didn't see it in there. I'm looking at the attachment files here, the attachment files. But essentially, I think that needs to, if in anything that we're allowing, we should be thinking about the architectural standards. And so I think it needs to fall under, I think it can live as its own ordinance, but we need to get the architectural standards in a legal case. We have to create a legal framework with architectural standards so that we're not opening up a door to development without that. They have to go hand in hand. And so you already have, I've presented on it a couple times. I think that that's an ordinance that could be drawn up quickly. I've at length documented the existence of the ones we have in the borough. And I think even 3 years ago, had a proposal, the page proposal, you guys all have it stated. I pulled it into this document from past time, but it has a proposed ordinance. And what I would want to overlay on that now, or propose overlaying to everyone here, is that we get the architectural standard in place. Which is tricky because obviously zoning doesn't do with architectural standards, and so we have to come up with that TND overlay, preservation overlay that could fit into.
Okay. So we'll push that one. So next month as well.
I think so.
Okay. Very good. Definitions.
Definitions, spaces. So, and again, I pulled this together very quickly for the Thursday deadline, so forgive for mostly heavy text. I didn't have a chance to put some pretty pictures on there, so photographs. Basically, this issue, my primary objective, Jim and I have spoken to this issue a little bit over past meetings. There are a lot of definitions of spaces especially related to recreational areas and spaces that are either used interchangeably at times in the code or maybe used incorrectly, but used frequently enough. And we need to kind of resolve those terms and make sure we all agree on the definitions of these terms as we prepare to update, as Tom Esty prepares to update the mandatory dedication of parkland and recreational fee ordinance or ordinances. I'm not sure, what that final ordinance is going to look like. But I know it's going to use some or all of these terms, and so we want to make sure they are properly defined and separated, delineated. So the highlights on this chart, I kind of went through and just looked at Saldo and zoning, all the definitions that are related to primarily 9738, but other open space and public space definitions. So I wanted to do, and the secondary objective is obviously just to clean up and resolve conflation of terms. So I did a little gap analysis first. And I just went through all the definitions and saw what terms were used and how they were defined and where they were defined. And you'll notice in this highlighted text, common open space. It's defined in chapter 97, the Saldo. It's not defined in zoning. Is it used in zoning? It actually is. So maybe we need to include it. A definition in zoning, we probably do. Then there's terms like recreational areas, land, and or facilities. That's used throughout 97, but especially in 9738. We actually don't have a definition for these terms. That's a gap in my mind. Maybe that's an umbrella term to include some of these other terms, but we need to say that. So if we're going to use that term, we got to use it or define it. Public recreation. I believe that one is a term that's defined, defined in 112. Hold on, let me look at my notes here. But it's not used. So, or it's used once. Let me check. Yeah, it's not used at all. There is nowhere that public recreation specifically is used in 97 or 112. So maybe we're going to use it going forward. If not, we should strike it. So that's just another example. What I really want to do though, and I did not go through the process of trying to research appropriate definitions for these terms. That's like next meeting, future work for me, which is fine. But I want to make sure that we're all on board and in terms of defining this so that Tom can take that and run with it in the ordinance. Park or parkland, that's a fairly obvious one. Well, there's actually no definition for park or parkland in our zoning or our salad. So that's another one that's used. And I should mention, these terms are also used throughout the PROS plan, which is going to be finalized. And so that's going to go hand in hand with the ordinance. So, and they don't necessarily, they offer some hints as to how it should be defined. And a lot of the details, as far as there are design guidelines for these terms for recreational facilities in 9738, so that we understand to some extent what kind of land we would accept as mandatory dedication. But again, those terms are not defined at the higher level, so we can't really build an ordinance without those terms. So that's my first, brush at this kind of gap analysis and definitions. I intend future steps, if we all agree, would be to start to define those terms, researching other municipalities, seeing what the PROS plan says, adding some definitions for review and consideration, and then moving on from there so that we can get started on the ordinance. But that's the extent of that piece.
So I think.
Oh, one other thing, Jim, I'm sorry. One, we should also consider terms that we might use that aren't currently defined. Things that we've talked about at length, which is private space, private recreation space. These things are not defined anywhere. They're not necessarily used in the zoning or the SALDO, but they are used in our PROS plan as examples of other types of recreation space. We're trying to get rid of private, an example of private space in our code currently, but it might behoove us to include a definition. Or maybe it's just everything that's not public space, I don't know, but it might behoove us to include a definition. So that's another thing I will probably propose in the future for consideration. So, great. Does anybody have any? I know I just ran through that really quickly. 8 o'clock. I'm going to try to keep it quick when I present. So if you have any questions or concerns, or you have any guidance or direction you want to offer, I'm all ears.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks. This is great work, and definitions are the most important.
It's a great start as well.
Well, and I've heard plenty of people say that too with zoning, like definition, that's where it's key. And so getting this down, getting the right ones in there, eliminating, this is all work that would have been great if it happened. And I'm sure some of it happened in the last update, but this is so valuable. I just want to throw out 2 thoughts on it. So many of our surrounding municipalities, you might do some research. I would just encourage you, use, the modern tools we have now, and research, if you would, like the surrounding municipalities and see who all has the same language. Because there is a tendency to say, municipality X has it. There's probably some basis for that. When the history of this is that so many municipalities have adopted boilerplate language that filtered down from federal and state agencies. And really is that's applicable. And UMAC lab, coming up with a different definition or finding it your own way is going to be more reflective of Westchester than anything else you can find. And the other thing is that so many of the new zoning codes, SALDOs, everything else that are coming out are relying on images. We are trying to put into text all this language, and then when the outcome is not we expect, like, oh, what happened? We need to get the solicitor to change the text. And the text is so important, but at least I look through the new zoning codes that and a lot of the form-based codes and new work in this place that I'm working, and it's way more image than it's text. And obviously images are hard for the solicitors, but I think that the more that you put in there of image to reflect, then we can kind of coalesce on it. Because it's hard for us to understand. What is that open space? And then you got parkland, but that's not defined. So you could come up with a definition of parkland, but I think if you came up with a definition in conjunction with, we got 7 parks, let's get a couple pictures of this is what, when we're saying park, this is what we mean. That's really helpful.
Talent to the park.
I'm just gonna add, I do patent rights all the time, so they're for attorneys, they're not for making things, but that's the thing, knowing how to draw for attorneys.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
maybe some insight.
I appreciate that, Thomas. And I will say, based on all the things you've discussed over the years that I've been on, that's in line with what you presented for us. And so the avoiding I only know that stuff because of what you taught us here at PCD is that, the codes that we have are from the 60s and 70s and are all boilerplate language. And so I appreciate the fact that we should avoid that, and using images definitely more effective, as shown by many of your presentations that are just text, unlike mine, unfortunately. Definitely more effective. I agree with you and believe in that too. So I'll take those definitely into consideration. Thanks.
Minimum lot width, is that you as well? Minimum lot width?
Sorry?
Who is, minimum,
I have definitely rolled that into,
TNT.
but I think it's really TNT preservation ordinance
Okay.
language, because I think it really, for us to, my 2 cents on that, and it's definitely because I've kind of categorized the different things that fit into these buckets.
Sure.
We don't want to pursue any of that stuff until we have architectural guidance. That would be my 2 cents.
okay, we're flying through.
Okay.
Sheila, guess who's
This
up?
is mine, and so it's a presentation and it has pictures, but it's also sort of a stream of consciousness, because I'm trying here.
That's fine.
So I'm not gonna read through all of this. The general gist of what I came up with is that sight lanes, the sight triangles and intersection design and all of pedestrian safety is very related. And we have very specific language on our books that sort of references some PennDOT stuff. And when I really dove into this, we're missing a huge part of our borough because we don't define what an alley really is. And so a lot of this stuff is not, it doesn't apply to alleys, but like, why doesn't it apply to alleys? And that, I compared a lot of languages. I looked at all this stuff. Well, one thing I found was that PennDOT will put up with pedestrian crossing treatment if there are 4 lanes or more. So Market Street is 3 lanes. So I was like, ooh, we're gonna have, sorry, just gonna say that. Okay, pedestrian sidewalks, I found this image, I'm sorry. So there's the 4 lanes, keep going. I looked at highway stuff, I looked at sidewalks. Pedestrian safety, there's the sidewalks, and if you scroll to the next slide, this is really our town center. It's not our town center, it's somebody else's. I grabbed it, just telling you, stream of consciousness, so I'm like, here, I need an image like that, there it is. We need to manage how our pedestrians and how our restaurants are policed. It's not the police, but we really need to set up some structure for Gay Street shutdown that is enforceable. And we have a problem. I watched a car accident in front of OPA, and it was, they have like trees out. It's gorgeous. It's so cozy. I love OPA. It's one of my favorite restaurants. I don't want to get them in trouble, but I totally do because of this issue. Like, you can't cross the street and because of it's not safe. So we can keep going. I can just then I did this. This is me going too far, but we have beyond pedestrian safety issues of crosswalks. We have one of the major complaints that I've heard over the years living here is that we have brick sidewalks. I do not personally want to get rid of brick sidewalks, but for our older community, the brick sidewalks especially out of town center can be rough. And it's not just our older population, it's our moms, it's our runners. Technically it is not legal for the use of the street if there is a sidewalk available for pedestrians. But I live on Sharpless Street, they do it all the time. I have a neighbor who's not the most mentally stable who likes to scream at people who are running down the street. And he's not wrong, but it's very disturbing. And it's because of brick sidewalks. So we need to think about that. Okay, all right. Here are the PennDOT requirements for adding stop signs, which we definitely need to consider. I think on Price Street, maybe not where some of the neighbors want them, but
Oh, Bill in Washington.
Yes,
Yes.
Bill in Washington, yes,
People fly down.
there's some roads that just are really
As
super
soon as it
dangerous.
gets warm out, there's so many crashes at Bill.
There's these spots that are just like cringe, and you see people like at the corners, like, what do I do here? And it's very scary. Anyway, I have dealt with this on council. The requirements for adding a stop sign are steep, and they involve how many people have died here. It's like terrifying laws about adding a stop sign, but we need to get a better handle on that. So here are my proposed revision areas. First, code language updates. We need a clear definition, and we need to line it up with PennDOT's definitions so that when we're asking for stuff, we sort of know that we can't or we can't. Is my thought. Not 100% because there are like, some of our situations are very specific and they're not PennDOT roads, and that would be great. Then I go to extend site triangle definitions. This issue is about enforcement, and I don't know what to do about alleys, because it just isn't really possible, but I'd like to consider how that, when we get into defining alleys, how are we defining sight lines at alley ends? Because not only on alleys, we're talking about cars, we're talking about pedestrians, we're talking about cars coming, from the alley across pedestrian walkways into street intersections, and quite frequently you have hedges or buildings right up to the corners. Like, that's terrifying. I mean, we all live with it, but as far as zoning, it terrifies me. Okay, next slide actually shows some pictures of, so you have buildings right up to pedestrian walkways where this car coming out can't see, you have to go very slowly. And I'm not saying this is terrible. I also, when I was on council, I was trying to get some town center alleys to have stop signs, and I was told repeatedly that was not allowed. You couldn't do one-way alleys and you couldn't do stop signs. However, we have both of those existing so like we just need to define the alleys. I know I'm talking about pedestrian safety, but like the alleys are so unsafe that I think we really need to focus on. Then driveways, we just need to be really on top of our paint. I think we're doing pretty good on this, but we need to just make sure that we continue painting. That's not a wish, that's just a random thing. Okay, so this is again not our borough, but this is the sight line, clear sight line, which I don't know an alley that has this. And I don't know, I don't know if we definitely need it, but we need to discuss it. And how.
Yeah, I think just to fair on the site triangles, it's on every project that we see come through the borough, we're usually getting a waiver for that site triangle because it's impossible to meet the requirements of that site triangle. And it kind of conflicts with, I guess, the want or the need or the desire from a preservation and historic standpoint. Those houses have corners, right? So we're not going to chop corners off of buildings necessarily.
No, but other safety things that we could do. Could we put in stop signs that were further back, or could we paint white lines that indicate slow down at the end of this alley? Like, I know, I'm just saying that like,
I think it's fair enough to just bring everything out onto the table. I think there are a lot of traffic calming, changing pavements, changing textures of colors, that help.
All right, so this is really my solution to a lot of this, which maybe, yeah, this guy, continuing safety audits. So I would be asking, I think, Borough Council, or maybe the Transportation Committee, to set up pedestrian safety audits so that we get people in every ward on a regular basis walking the streets, walking the alleys, and pointing out that, hey, twice walking down, like crossing this alley, the cars couldn't see me, they pulled out and they tried to go. Like, that's where that happens. So where are the real problems? not any one of us is gonna know all of them, but if we could set up a committee that sort of follows the standardized regular review, maybe we could,
Well, you may need to get something from the police department to just show us traffic incidents.
I mean, that's,
I'm sure Thomas is the highest one.
that is definitely possible, but it's not,
That's only one piece of, that's only.
Yeah, well, I'm just throwing.
that goes back to how you get the stop signs. Like, sure, if 5 people died there this year, like, yeah, you're gonna put a stop sign. But if you
It's
just,
somebody else.
right,
Uh,
5 people died, and then somebody said, hey, that intersection kills people, let me see the report. Then you pull the report, and then you take it to PennDOT, and then you take it to the engineers, and then you maybe get a stop sign. I'm talking about, how do we make sure that there's a stop sign a few feet back from the sidewalk in an alley? Because it's sort of crazy, but why not? Why can't we be doing that if it's a really dangerous intersection? And we would have to set up systems where, you know, okay, I walked there, this has happened 5 times to people in the community, and these are the dates. And some nonsensical system that.
There are some alleys with stop signs.
Yes.
I'm trying to think, did we have any records, because would have had to demonstrate the need and get that approved on one of those records, of what it took to get those done.
Look, I asked Sean to put stop signs in alleys, and he said that is not permitted, never permitted. I said, okay, well, can we change it to one way? That is not permitted. I was like, wait, these are, we have them.
There are municipalities from sea to shining sea with both of those things.
Right.
Permitted. It'll be-
So we have them, they exist.
Yeah.
We need to manage them. And I know this is supposed to be about general pedestrian safety and sightlines, but I just think that this is such an issue that is absolutely, there's no definition of what an alley really is. There's no, you know, permission to do this or not do this. Our borough manager thinks it's not permitted, but it obviously was at some point. So how do we, I don't know how I turn a pedestrian safety thing into an alley.
Well, pedestrian safety and alleys are pedestrian movement and alleys are tied to the hip, so.
Exactly. So it's like, sorry, I got very stuck in that.
No worries.
That's my basic, that's my presentation.
Okay. Well, I think, just trying to figure out how to move this forward for the work session, or what may,
Well, I thought you made a very good point about the fact that we have made these adjustments so frequently to site triangles, and perhaps if we could just get a log of where we have done that, what was the ordinance, what did we adjust it to? It might give us some guidance as to what the next, what's acceptable, what's fair, what we've done in the past, what we've been able to live in the past, and maybe be a step toward more direction.
Thomas.
Yeah, in the presentation that I'm not gonna be, my first slide is actually, I had little snippets for everybody, but it was 4 years. And, I think, you know, everything you're saying makes, a ton of sense. I'd love to work on it with you. I also think the inverse of a lot of the things, you know, the goal is pedestrian safety. There's a great, civil and traffic engineer named Chuck Moran, who's been working on something called Strong Towns for a long time. And one of the things they do is work with municipalities to do these safety audits. And one of the things they find that there's an inverse relationship often to the comfort of the vehicle or the person driving the vehicle and the pedestrian, right? And so there are often these situations where you're in and out, I can imagine. Now, I'm not saying, so it would be interesting, one, to look at from an actual danger point of view, where are people most hurt? And I imagine actually alleys. I'm just guessing. And I'm guessing it's in part because even if there are those scary moments, you're usually moving slowly enough, and also you're more aware. And so one of the things that they look at is that when the more dangerous incidents are usually when cars are getting comfortable and they have to take sidewalks. So actually, from a pedestrian point of view, the most dangerous areas are often when you actually have to extend the sidewalks. Now, that isn't to say like to hell the sidelines by any means. And I think one of the things that we looked at a couple of weeks ago were the bump outs. You know, essentially, you know, when you're doing the on-street parking, you can't go all the way to the stop sign anywhere. So you have that strike back, let's say 20 feet. Okay, well, it's really expensive. I'm working with a municipality right now, and the numbers coming back for 4 bump outs on a street or something like $1 million. Okay, that's what expensive. But there are groups around the country that they're saying, okay, but how do we do it with paint? How do we do it with right now? How do we transform this place in the next 12 months? Okay, well, we're gonna do the plastic bottle, whatever is gonna work for PennDOT or whoever the borough, and paint or whatever. And pedestrians should be able to go out that at least that 7.5, 8 feet.
Right.
So then from a sightline point of view, from the way that sightlines would be measured, it hasn't changed anything. Right? The way that the pedestrian has 16 feet less to sprint across High Street, and the way the cars now to the pedestrians has fundamentally changed. So I think I think it's such a great idea, and I think as we dig into it more and come up with different things, I would imagine that there are going to be things like the bump outs, which don't fundamentally change the sight triangle, but drastically improve pedestrian safety.
Yes, definitely. And the only thing, so design, I've been trying to design for myself. And I came up with a definition of, beautifying something, improving functionality, but also providing trust in this space around. So when you go to put your coffee cup down and your table doesn't fall down, that's trust. You know that table's gonna stay up because it's a table, right? Walking around the borough should be like that. You should be allowed to walk around the borough and not be terrified. Now, if we do too much at the valleys, then we put into people's minds driving the car that they are trusting that it's all under control, and you don't want that. You want them on edge, right? So I know that it's a weird sort of we don't want to provide too much safety to the drivers, but I want to provide a lot of safety for the pedestrians, and spots like Darlington and Price are just insane.
Yeah.
And you cut off a whole section of the borough because you don't have a safe, comfortable way to cross the street. So yeah, let's just keep running. Also do my house.
Yeah.
So that's basically it.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. Okay, maximum building coverage, is that still on your plate there? What is that?
And I would say again, I think that fits in that you don't want to, like, I think we had a resident, coming to zoning hearing with a very legitimate concern. We talked about that NC2 and NC1 where both of them have that max building coverage. I think eliminating that is a step in the right direction. We can rely on our pervious. However, how many tools do we have in the toolbox for design? And so holding back at least for now, because I crafted a standalone ordinance, and my note as part of my update is architectural guidelines. Is there a way that we can fold that in? I think I would really respond to an argument just saying that should just be changed. Sure. On the other hand, if we can try to get the architectural guidelines in place for a sizable bit of the borough, then we can fold that in inside of it.
Yeah, because I think it kind of also ties into what's next with this car.
I have a USB.
Excellent. Let's try this out.
I might have gone overboard with the printing too, but.
Let me try. It should be right on.
It's supposed to be Aaron's, but you're special. Good. It's not double sides. My printer does not.
Has gallery set up?
No.
Well, I'll watch him.
All right.
Yeah.
Up here too.
Yeah, it's up here. But yeah, so I'm covering the East Corridor development. We all know that it's full of auto body shops and not much retail and commercial activity. So, to start off, we know that it's one of the borough's, designated future enhancement areas in the comp plan. So it was discussed throughout the task force meetings within the comp plan. We know it's located in the TC and CS districts, and it extends out to Worthington, which is the upper part, and then Beaumont, which these both border West Goshen. And it has potentiality to become a walkable mixed-use corridor. And some key notes I wanted to include is that we have benefits of CS districts, which is a unified mixed-use development, which I'll get more into in a little bit. And then we kind of, like I said, we want to see ground floor commercial activity with second floor residential or office space. And another thought, which there may be a drive-through restriction, which I'll get more into, and a few others. And in order to implement this, in order to implement one of these, or somehow get this moving, we need to study funding, which we have VPP, which is currently canceled this year. And then we have the Community Realization Program, which is kind of tailored to these needs. And then we have Department of Community Development through the county and Department of Community Economic Development, which all provide funding for things like this. And we also have borough funds, we have bid, and we have private grants. And similar to that, we need to collaborate with West Goshen and bid if we do a full scale change, which will take time. I'm not saying we could get this done this week, but bid is a big part of it, and they have recently, which you can sort out of it. So you can see West Goshen and Borders, that's Market and Gay Street, and then that's the zoning district right there. And we're under NC2 is mixed use, so we have options. And then just a couple of zoning notes I wanted to make. 112.304 is PS district. And I wanted to read that it says the district shall also allow for a unified mixed use development on parcels that have frontage of Market Street, Gay Street, and others. And CS district has the option of a unified mixed use development, which they use, and that provides affordable housing in combination with community facilities and/or neighborhood amenities. So that actually that also ties into Steve's attainable housing. So that could be an option for up top, and then maybe retail, commercial activity at the bottom. And then also I wanted to just point this out. It says in the comp plan or in the zoning code, it said encouraging the transition of East Market and East Gay Streets corridors to be a more pedestrian oriented development that can relieve the development pressure on town center district. That's just a thing that's been in there for a while, and it's been working, and we're on it. So, and then I'm moving on to the comp plan, and with the borough updating the comp plan soon, we do have the opportunity to build on these established goals, which I will get to in a little, and strategies, plus establish new ones if needed. And as of today, I used the one intern that she gave that full retrospective on the comp plan. That was very helpful when I went through that. Only one goal has been completed at the Market Street corridor development regarding that improvement area. So and all these have a time frame. All these had or have a time frame of 1 to 2 years as it's ongoing. It's not going to collect dust. So we should either designate a meeting or we should designate a time to go through and determine which we should cover more, keep a close eye on, or which could be a potential action item in the future. Plus include in the new comp plan. And these are just some quotes that I found on page 25 of the comp plan, which covers the whole East Corridor development. I'll just read a few off. Presently auto-oriented future development in Market/East Gay East Corridor should allow for a mix of uses, including residential, and should better accommodate for bicycles and pedestrians. The existing CS zoning district and other development regulations should be amended to extend the existing mixed-use historic character of the downtown area. So we want to really get this area we're all in right now and push it down there in a simple way of saying it. And we know this will take time. This is not going to be a one-step thing, but it's going to be a many-step thing. So we can spend all of it. So right here I have all of the 2016 comp plan strategies And these aren't the objectives. The objectives are more of the broader goals that are covered above these. So these are more the sub goals, so they're called strategies. And only the last one, which is on the next page, has been completed. I'm not gonna go through all these right now, and we can designate a
I
time
just
to
want to
go
point
through
out,
these.
I just want to point out, these two are falling under our purview.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So there's a few that don't fall under ours, and there are a few that do fall under ours. I just included all of them that relate to the corridor. So I thought it was important. And it also includes funding, possible funding sources, and the responsible party. But at the end, the only one we have completed was develop a strategy to coordinate traffic signalization along our community's Bay corridor. Which was funded through a grant called Green Light Go, which I found on the retrospective website. And the police conducted a traffic study along Marquis Bay corridor. The study led to the acquisition of the Green Light Go grant, and numerous improvements were made to the traffic signalization in that area. And then also, it is a huge advantage to us for improving this corridor. They were recently just authorized to operate through 2030. They plan to expand their boundaries from South Wayne Street to South Adams and East Washington to Price. So which kind of helps us and gives us more leeway. And also when we're working with them at some point, it will help us out. So this is our old boundaries. And if you go in and also keep up with it a little bit. Yeah, and then also I wanted to say that this isn't really related to the corridor, but they also, which I didn't know, they also plan to do a 4.7-mile pedestrian bike trail from the historic train station all the way down to Glen Mill. So I think that would be very cool. I'm a big trail person, and then we can go down more. And then this is a improvement district boundary. So this is what they improved to. You can't really read it, but it goes out to Adams on the east side. And I believe Bolmar is one or two more streets away from that. So it's just at the boundary. That's kind of what we're looking for. So yeah, like I said, they could be a huge benefit for us when looking at the expansion of this east corridor. So
I will say, as far as historic perspective, we did start to work on this, and we're discouraged by the borough from the expectation that any funding would be coming, and that's how it made its way to the parking lot list where it's lived long these last 5 years.
I guess I just want to feedback on that and say we made changes that we've had, this empty parking lot for a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
We've had Ribbon Sense and they're gonna be empty for a long time. I'm not crazy about what the initial plans to build there, but let's say that changes since, the last few years have triggered significant plans for development, because we do have the levers to zoning or proposed levers, and that's what's gonna make changes rather than rural investment, usually. And now more recent changes will hopefully get better housing than what was
And
proposed.
that's why I was pointing that at, what's under our ability.
That's right.
To
Yeah.
control.
Yeah.
Is that zone.
Yeah.
And then, so these are just some key actions that we can start with. If anyone has any other ideas, I'm open to them. I'm not fully, I've been here for half a year, so I'm not fully, I don't fully understand the zoning code and everything, but this is what I've come up with so far. So first, obviously, revisit comp plan to determine strategies are actionable. So we just go through, figure out what can be on the agenda and what we could amend, and then some zoning considerations as well. So like I said, unified mixed use development that allows us to have the affordable housing up top preferably, and then retail, commercial, or neighborhood amenities below. So that is a huge advantage to us, and especially when we're in the CS district already. So it's either we're gonna, second point, we're either gonna expand the MU or TC districts, or we can rezone, which isn't a good idea, or we could just use a unified mixed use development, which I think has a lot of power to it. And then this is kind of going overboard, which is increasing minimum height and building coverage / far which housing comes into play. And I realized that would be that would be detrimental to the CF district over on the west side. And it would allow developers and people coming in to build more commercial. I don't fully trust that one. That's what I'm gonna say. And another one I thought would be good would be to restrict drive-throughs, which is also in the comp plan. And then a few other ideas was no front parking lots, so no driveways, and we got to fill those gaps with
Which that's all updated zoning. Ray included that all in that.
Okay. Fill in gaps, so fill in driveway entrances onto Gate Street, onto Market Street. Provide more sidewalks, so it's more pedestrian friendly. There's I'll get to a little bit. There's also potential for a bicycle lane and maybe more crosswalks. To make it more pedestrian friendly. And then street trees. I emphasize this one a lot. We all know that street trees are a huge part of our borough, and they really enhance the area that they're in. And like I said, going back to collab with Bay and West Goshen Township, that'll be ideal and to apply funding. And the potential of the corridor, it would be transformed into a Gay Street, Market Street, vibrant eastern entrance into Westchester. So it'll be a beautiful gateway instead of seeing auto body shops if you drive there. And then a blend of residential, retail, office uses, retail below, residential up top, to create a lively corridor that supports downtown activity, improve sidewalks, crossings, signage, bike infrastructure, all the other things that make the neighborhood grow, and then also we can leverage MCU, MU, and TC zoning in overlay districts of height, and retail overlays, to maybe permit desired development patterns. And this provides relief, flexibility, and not only does it give us a better place to look at, it also supports smaller businesses, restaurant services that benefit from pedestrian traffic, in the close proximity to downtown. And then, so this is just a picture of what it looks like now. And then if you scroll down a little bit, thank you, Thomas, for pointing down the design standards. I would have never found this. So this is a pretty good picture. This would be, I don't know about the parking, but I like the picture this has in store. I like the bike lane. It would slow down traffic. It'll make it more pedestrian friendly. And that talk about wouldn't be there. But yes, this is a start. And it has corresponding numbers to what it would be, which, yeah. And then last page, just past PC discussion. I wanted to include that in there. That was the other points that I didn't include in this that were on the parking lot sheet. And those are just some pictures. But yeah, that's what I got.
Very nice, Quincy.
Can you stay on bottom image?
Yeah. So if anyone has any thoughts.
And it looks like plenty of opportunity there.
So, yeah, I was about to say, so, we were talking the other day about, where PennDOT owns roads, and obviously East Corridor is straight up PennDOT.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the things, when you look at this image and maybe some of the others too, that you can see, even if, right, like when you're driving that direction on Market, and it's like, it's nice. And then all of a sudden, whoa, it's not. Or coming back the other way around, you're coming in Gay, and then all of a sudden you get into town center, it's street trees, and it's like, we like being here. The street itself, I think, is the biggest detriment.
Yeah.
Right? It's to the pedestrian safety things. Like there are no bump outs, there are no street trees. If you do you mind scrolling up? Sure. Yeah, like the one above it, and because I think that like this is a pretty good thing. I don't know what it would take to get permissions, from PennDOT, but it seems to me that the changes that would make the biggest difference for the East Corridor, the zoning has already got updated to reflect a lot of the comp plan stuff, because I remember thought over that with Ray years ago, 5 years ago or something. But it's these things right here, and I don't know. To our earlier conversation, what is the path forward with PennDOT? I don't know, but can you scroll up a little bit? not to harp on this, but,
This one?
that one right there. You know, you've got these on-street parking lanes that are doing nothing for you.
Yeah.
But if it is on-street parking on either side, you know, municipalities will often, that's where their street trees go, right? It's, you lose in the end a few on-street parking spots.
Yeah.
But if you said every third on-street, you know, an on-street parking spot's like 22 feet, right? So then 44 feet. And that's actually a comfortable wide one. In town center, people park up like 18, right?
Yeah.
So, but let's say you were to get really comfortable on-street parking spots. You say, okay, every 44 feet, what I'm gonna do is put in a tree. And that tree is gonna come not all the way up to that white line, but almost, right? And then that way, you've got this protection and other, like you've narrowed down that street. So when you're driving, there might be a fast food place there, but you don't even know
You don't
because
know.
you're driving in between trees and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And and then there are little bump outs, right, where the street
Yeah.
tree is, this little bit of lawn or whatever. It does so much for the stormwater. You're parking now in between trees. We can do the whole bump. So I wonder
Back to
if
that.
the path forward, you know, for significant change would be starting to really kind of tackle, hey, what can we do within PennDOT? You know, I think High Street is a lot better than this in High Street and PennDOT.
Yeah.
And, you know, 'cause I think so many things, it's like, well, we need to change zoning, but in this case, it seems like the street is so terrible. If
Well,
we
I'm
could just,
curious how High Street went with it, like how did, I guess it was just, like,
Well, if I may, on the subject, Easttown Township is working on a project to decrease Lancaster Avenue from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. What they call complete street in the road guide. I thought PennDOT was throwing out the room. They met with PennDOT on the reception. They're working on the same thing that you see here. The trees, parking spaces, sidewalks in Berkeley.
I think it's a really interesting thing because I'm working with this municipality in Ohio. The city engineers are saying, ODOT will never look at this. It's the repeated line. City council, they say it will never work. And then you meet with the young civil engineer, they've only been out 10 years. They've been drinking the pedestrian Kool-Aid for a while, and they're 100% on board for the road diet. It's like they might be they're athletes.
It's a younger guy.
We have a high school down there, right? Like, I
For sure.
walk home sometimes from these, well, from those meetings, I walk home, I mean, like, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit here, but, there are so many pedestrians on the street, and it's not safe, but, one thing that gave me hope was that 7-Eleven, which has always been an eyesore, you know, everything around is gorgeous, and then there's 7-Eleven. When PennDOT did that remodel of High Street, the borough did contribute and pushed pretty hard for beautification and not just change, but working together, PennDOT and the borough made things happen. I don't know the specifics of how they got that sidewalk changed in the way that they did, but it's much better than it was. That, like, it's not perfect, so there are trees, but you know, we're gonna.
Nicole, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts here. One, no bid is currently talking about adding more planters or things or something. You know, I don't know what area, but to your point, they did just decide to charge a lot of people a lot of money down that way. So it may be worth a conversation to say, hey, put some planters over here too on the east side, right? Like as a maybe a quick fix in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I would say to, you know, the grocery store component, right? Like, if you're gonna want a narrow street, put them on a diet and have more pedestrian friendly, there needs to be an easier way to get to the grocery store besides a car, right? Right now, there's some capabilities on the west side, you know, with the sidewalks and everything for the giant. But if you are trying to get to the grocery store on the east side, you know, you're looking at challenging the powers that be that will make it there and back, successfully. So if you're gonna wanna put this on the diet, and I see the bike path and all those things, but it may be worth, if you're talking about zoning for that, like the A Street Plaza or things like that, maybe as you consider these changes, like how do you get a grocery store in there or something? How do you get a grocery store closer to the borough? So,
Yeah.
came to mind.
Perfect.
Okay.
I like it. Thank you. It is amazing what just adding trees and how, but how little of it.
And these are, you know, kind of, they, like, right now, we've got a 4-foot sidewalk on the right. And somehow or other, they changed the image a little bit, so they can get the street trees in there. But like, other municipalities put those trees in every two or every 3 parking spots. And okay, let's say that your public works says non-starter. You know what they, like, we're doing in Ohio, we're just putting big planters out there. We're just gonna put a big planter, and it's not gonna be the best tree in the world, but we can do it in the next 12 months.
Yeah, but that would significantly improve
That.
the value of
Trees alone.
Yeah, and I like the idea of just creating that buffer for the pedestrian on the sidewalk, just to feel a level of safety with his cars flying by. Just tree up that behind.
Yeah.
But even if that would encourage potential cars along there, it would narrow that up.
And I wonder if they would work with us to try to wrangle PennDOT, because that's a big lift and they learn so much.
And I know that, we don't have a bike lane, but we have like a safe bike trail or something along those lines. I think, I mean, I'll ride my bike, I think that would be, I don't know how possible it is to have a bike lane there, but I think that would be a perfect spot for a bike lane. Yeah, and I know with everything with PennDOT, everything, it's probably impossible, but yeah.
But
Well,
you-
they're
you
new
have
guys.
the trail where they're gonna put it.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
It, there's no excuse for
Yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of thing there.
It's a great reason. Yeah.
I think it would be a great catalyst for all them, the individual property owners to improve or bring it up, because I think it will. So I think that's a great place to start, just like Gay Street was and what it does.
But like, I just think of like the right of way is the biggest eyesore. Like 80% of the problem is the right of way, the right of way is the berms.
Yeah, I agree.
So can I just point out that, the public works, that picture right there.
Yeah.
There was a big issue of maintenance. This was not here, this was on council, right? Public works.
But you're going, I know.
Yeah, like,
Talking about over here.
no, other side. Yeah, so, they were not maintaining their sidewalk because they never did maintain their sidewalk. Because it was that side of town and we didn't care. You know, if you do that in, yeah, like,
We care.
we didn't care as much. And finally, they started, you know, saying, hey, you guys should pull your weeds. And asking them to pull their weeds, there's a bunch of really cute places down there and they're maintaining their sidewalks and like, I mean, it's only this much of a sidewalk, but it's still a sidewalk and it's a usable sidewalk and there's some much more interesting places down there and maintaining that sidewalk, whether it's the property owners or somebody citing them for what, you know, like that stuff matters. Yes, they still need some better trees down there, but like the public works and people being cited is another thing.
I think it's important to improve, the relationship from my house to these waters. So, Quincy, thank you, nice job, appreciate it. It's a lot to, that's a good start upon. And I think I like the whole idea of management.
Yeah.
Steve, I think you're next. Let's see.
Side yards.
Oh, my bad. Side yards, anybody?
That's me.
Okay.
There should be.
Good news.
All right, so this is what I consider a fairly low hanging fruit issue that we can address, I think, fairly efficiently. But just as a little background, especially for folks who weren't on the planning commission back in January 2025, so a little over a year ago, we discussed an email from a HART member regarding the lack of clarity in the definition of side yards. And if you'll scroll down, Jim, the next one's better. That one's clear. NC2, NC3, and the Commercial Services District have these types of definitions for the side yard, minimum side yard. And it says existing adjacent, comma, 10 feet minimum. And Tom Estee gave one interpretation and Jason Burrow gave another interpretation. And we basically went around the room and kind of agreed that there could be multiple interpretations of this requirement. And so that was mainly for the town center at the time. That has since been, the dimensional requirements for the town center district have been revised, so that's no longer an issue. But these three districts, NC2, NC3, and the CS, still have this definition. And so I think we just need to change it for all three. And so that's kind of what I looked at. And up above, I just gave NC1 as an example. Town center is back with 0 now. NC1 is 15 feet, and these are all existing adjacent, comma, or 5 feet minimum, comma, existing adjacent. So if you, where are we? Jim, you're scrolling around. Oh, I don't know where we're at. Scroll back up one more. Thank you. There you go. Perfect right there. Maybe if you could zoom out a little bit, that'd be great. But if not, that'd be perfect. So I'm just going to address these kind of real quickly, and then I have a proposal that we can discuss, and we don't have to agree on one now. Or definitely not. Well, we might. Maybe we will. Hopefully we could. So NC2, just as kind of a review for those, I think everybody kind of knows maybe what's included in NC2, but that's a real mix, a wide variety of housing types. And I guess I don't think we need to call it the zoning map. I had it open for my own reference, but we've got twins on West Bernard and West Union and North Adams. We got row homes in South Darlington and North New, singles and twins, South Walnut and South Matlack. That includes a lot of student housing. Large singles at around Marshall Square Park, townhouses at High Point and Shanahan. That's all in NC2. So our current side yard minimum is existing adjacent, comma, 10 feet minimum. But the stated objective in the zoning ordinance is to maintain the existing neighborhood qualities and streetscape characteristics. There's no single neighborhood quality. There's a lot of different neighborhoods included in NC2. So my thought in proposing something is to account for that, therefore keeping some flexibility and not just 10 feet minimum. So my thought was to maybe use the existing adjacent, but clarify to say 10 feet or match existing adjacent side yard if existing adjacent side yard is less than 10 feet. So you can do 10 feet or more, but if you have something that's adjacent to your lot that's less than, you can go under. That was my general thought. We can discuss that, or I can move on. So I don't know what you guys think. I didn't include a lot of pictures, but we can all visualize all these different neighborhoods and say, yeah, there's a lot of different side yards out there. And I wanted to account for that flexibility so that we can meet the objective of maintaining the neighborhood quality of the street, the differing streetscape characteristics. So that's for NC2.
I think the clarity that it provides, I think it's 10 feet or that gives you that flexibility with it. I think makes sense. And I think it's less open to interpretation than the previous one, so I think at least it's a step in the right direction.
Right, and I would love Tom's interpretation or view on this too, but from a legal perspective. You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're proposing is clearer than what it is. I mean, it's clear.
Okay.
More the minimum. More about, yeah. The each side yard is minimum 10 feet, but if the adjacent side yard is less than 10 feet, you can do that.
So I remember maybe 5 years ago now when Ray was drawing stuff, and my question was, okay, but we allow for twins in the room. And Kevin basically said, do a condo or do a HOA. And this is one of the Achilles heels of our traditional fabric, is that we've had this side yard setback in there forever. Now, again, anytime I was thinking like of a change of thing of PMF, the last thing we want is more of, I forget the name of it, but like the Toll Brothers development, like, the vinyl siding townhouses. And they're going to do that anyway because they're going to do it as the HOA, but this is not allowing, a citizen builder to go out there and build a two townhouses, because you can't do that anymore unless you do an HOA. So I do think it's a really valuable step in the right direction. I also think that there is this inherent conflict in that we allow building types that don't allow these side yards. And Kevin Gore's only response at the time was, then do a big HOA development.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I don't know if there's a single answer. We're trying to move forward towards more clarity. Some of the issues you bring up can't be solved, obviously, by the side yard. But maybe this is a step.
100%.
All right, well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Thomas, could you give some clarification what you're saying, regarding that? I mean,
One, NC2 does allow for, it's attached, semi-attached or attached structures from a zoning point of view. And then you get the building code, and they like a twin or a townhouse, right? And currently, lots require, this kind of setup, if you have a lot. And then if you have a big enough lot, obviously, the precedent has been set in the borough to develop multiple buildings and put it under an HOA. So you can meet your side yard setbacks because the side yard setbacks are a lot specific thing, right? So we have structures that are allowed within the NC2, but could only be developed under an HOA, right? You can't build a twin and have our traditional lot line going down the side. Like I live in a twin, and the property line is the double brick wall between the two houses, which acts as a firewall.
Right.
And that's how the borough developed. You can't do that now with the side yard setback, even though that building type is allowed. And so the response from Kevin and what we've seen get approved is an HOA structure. That's getting to that bigger question of this whole, okay, what are the lots supposed to be? And the preservation ordinance, it's largely, this touches on the same issue.
I'm just wondering, I live in it too.
Right.
So.
And the property line goes on the side. Correct. And so your lot is non-conforming. The vast majority of our lots are non-conforming in NC2. And that was clear when we updated zoning, and it was essentially, we're going to allow Toll Brothers to do it because they're having HOA, or these small, like if you have a big enough lot, but you can't actually legally build the way that we used to build with the HOA, with the dollar.
We're very fortunate to have Carol.
That question arose. So if you talk of an adjacent building, to me, that could be my neighbor across the yard or my attached twin. So in my attached twin, there is a 0 lot line, which arose when I went to build a deck. And I was told I couldn't take my deck to the line, even though my building is smack up against. So I have this very strange little elbow in my deck. So my question is, first of all, how does that apply? Because if you say it can be your adjacent building, does that mean a 0 lot line? So be careful how we use the word adjacent. And perhaps we need to be careful about what structures, because row homes obviously only meet, the end guy meets the minimum for what it was in the deck. The twin homes meet the minimum on only one side. Or should
That's HOA, which is what
his
point was,
right.
essentially the only way that a new twin or any of these allowed types could be built in the NC2 is on existing large lots. You have to merge and build an HOA to move forward. Because my critique of this is like back when it was being put forward, it was already on the books. And essentially I was saying, well, we should change it. And they were saying,
I don't know that that was uniformly, I think we need to have a larger discussion about that, because I don't know that that was uniformly applied. Semi-detached, you got all these kinds of things. So I think that really has to factor into this discussion, because there are absurd things that come before the zoning hearing board that you go like, oh my God, why are we even thinking of
we would love to get a marker.
Well, we did that under the last comp plan. We try to send a laundry list and
Well,
I will bring it up again.
Our complaint funding got derailed, so if you just send it to us, maybe we can work on it.
Well, you know what, I'll just make a list of all the, what I consider silly CHP things.
That'd be
that we
great.
have.
Try to look great. Yeah,
Great.
because we want to allow that kind of development to happen.
Yeah, we're trying to serve the citizens.
The last one was curbing on the alley. When you were talking about alleys.
Sure.
We had to deal with an HOA, the new one on South Matlock Street, that wanted to put curbing on the alley, or was being required to put curbing on the alley. It's like,
It's the only little strip of curb in the whole alley.
So to speak to your point, and because I do recognize, because the term adjacent has been misused in other reviews or in other applications, from my perspective. And so adjacent in my mind, and the reason I put the minimum statement in there is because on one side of the twin, the line is 0, which is less than 10 feet. On the other side, it might be 10 feet or it might be less to the neighboring property, the neighboring twin on the other property, but that's still a property line. So to me, the adjacent would be 10 feet on one side, 0 feet on the other. So that's your side yard guidance. That's what I was trying to think through and try to describe. I realize it doesn't account for every type of dwelling type, and I'm not sure that's feasible with it, and maybe it is. Maybe that is a dimensional requirement that we need to add by building type, although it seems a little unwieldy, but not necessarily impossible. Right, so maybe that's where the road we have to go down. For
My favorite building type is the townhouses with the little passage.
with the breezeways.
No, they're so great. So you have to make sure that, so it doesn't go just from 10 to 0. You have a little passage.
Well, it's 10 or match existing if it's less than 10. So less than 10 is 0 to 10. It could be, and in my mind, that's what I'm trying to get across. But maybe it's by building dwelling type. I don't know. We have to think through it, I guess is the point. But I appreciate it. Okay, well so that's where it stands right now. It sounds like we still have a little more work to do on NC2. So maybe it's not as low a hanging fruit as I thought. I mean, like a little higher, but that's all right. Yeah, well, I'd like to think that, well, I made it easy. I don't know if it's easy, but NC3 is easier. High density neighborhoods, primarily apartment buildings on larger lots. One thing to note here is that many of those lots adjoin NC1 or NC2 lots with lower density, larger than, one single families or others. And part of it is, we do want to protect those properties as well from encroachment by these larger apartment buildings. So I guess this one I thought it's simplified. It should just be 10 feet unless we think the existing adjacent could be larger, and therefore we should say if existing adjacent is larger than 10 feet, match existing adjacent.
At that point would be a takings because we already have some. Correct.
I mean, some of them would be non-conforming lots.
Yeah, but if you have a current lot that has a 10-foot side yard and we were so say the NC2, actually, it's no longer 10, it's going to be 15.
Well, it depends on how big the lot is. Maybe they have to get a variance.
Well, I propose just keeping it at a minimum of 10 feet. Keep it simple and, moving forward with that. So that would be my proposal for that.
That was pretty clear.
I think that's fair. And then the commercial.
What about the fact that the twin?
So I took that one and I rolled it into this, again, the kind of preservation one, just thinking, okay, if right now the answer to Kevin was you got to do the HOA. If we were to say, hey, we're trying to actually allow for the type of buildings that contribute to the character of the borough that are in NC2, and you say, okay, you can do a twin here, and then you get an ugly twin because zoning has no say on design or materials. If there was a way to set the stage from a material and a character point of view, and then allow that, I think that would at least be a safer way of starting. Sure. That. So that's where it goes back to kind of the TND of this is a step in the right direction. I wonder if you were to allow for the twin to be built with the bot right here. You have, but it's got to follow
you know, historic architectural elements.
Sense?
This is the last one, CS district. Again, this was, it's funny that it had existing adjacent comma 5 feet made, but I'm not sure what developments they were considering. There's probably examples, but I thought we would want to simplify this again, just as 5 feet. But again, as Thomas has pointed out, there are nuances. This one is a little different because it's not residential, but there might be examples where we don't want to restrict it just to 5 feet.
And to clarify, is there set?
Right.
So it's establishing a building envelope and so it's, I think that cleans it up because presently it's existing adjacent 5 feet minimum.
Right.
They're making it 5 feet for this guy.
Yeah, and I guess to Thomas, to your point about can they build a twin in NC3, I think this could be done in steps. We could revise it to a simple 10 feet, and then as we move through the preservation, I would still promote that just for clarity in the interim development reviews, and then hopefully maybe we get to more granular solutions through the preservation ordinance development or something like that.
Maybe you also have to look at the definition side, because it shouldn't apply to 0 lot line. Well, I don't know what it says now.
Yeah, that's it.
We gotta find that.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so that's.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Single house.
Thanks. The simple one.
Pass.
Now, Steve, you're up.
All right, well, thank you. This was really very much the reason that I wanted to become involved with the planning commission. As I said before, there was only one teacher who lived within the borough limits. And the only reason that I'm able to is the job my wife has. Many other teachers living in West Battlefield Township or someplace pretty far away, even out of state, pretty far away. Most people are Honeybrook and West. So the objective: increase the housing for middle-income workers in our community. Primary target 80 to 120% of the median income. In Chester County, it's 127,000. 152, roughly monthly of up to $10,000 a month. For expenses, 2,800 of which would be, let's say, to a mortgage payment. If you're going to go with that 28%, then still puts a house less than $500,000. And currently, as of last week, there were 2 in that price range. One was a 3x1.5 bath for $425, and one was a 2x1 for $280,000. And it was more of a little house in it. So as you can see, not a lot of inventory of that. Taking a look from a rental standpoint, I use Westchester Area School District, 118,000 is median income in the school district. Again, about $10,000 for expenses, 30% of that, which you see a little bit higher for rent, about $3,000 a month. So let's say for a family to have a 3-bedroom apartment, a little bit bigger. There are some 2-bedroom apartments, but there was the only 3-bedroom apartment for less than $3,000 a month in the borough's metropolitan. Audubon apartments is only 2. The one over by Everhart, on the other side behind apartments from Monterey. So they allow 2-bedroom, so not allowed 3-bedroom. Affordable housing for moderate income, includes small home, townhomes, duplexes, ADUs, support for, our firemen, our policemen, our school teachers, our nurses, people who work at a hospital and healthcare relief. Some of the market drivers, again, the borough just keeps growing 4.6% year over year over year over year. The borough keeps growing, and it puts a lot of pressure on the housing market. I have a friend who's moving back to Tampa. He's Wawa, long-time Wawa guy, and he wants to move back to the borough, and he wants it's that, and it just willing to pay a lot of money for it. Starter homes under $400,000. They don't really exist. They don't exist here in the borough. Again, you're looking downtown. Here are some of the statistics about the student housing and the pressure that puts on. 37.5% of all rental units in the borough are dedicated where they have student housing. The dwellings. So, right, one house may have 3 bedrooms or whatever. And even the inflated prices of those. I don't know if any of your kids live in any of those. I did. It's roach infested all above a restaurant town, and they're paying $1,700 a piece each every kid. Each kid's paying $1,700 a piece, and there's 4 of them. Oh, you want to have another kid move into your bedroom? Well, it doesn't cut your cost of that. They each have to pay something. You're gonna have 2 in a bedroom or 1 in a bedroom. So I think that also puts a lot of pressure on those rights.
And I just want to highlight that absentee landlord issue.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because that's, if you're renting out an ADU that's on your lot, there's a whole different relationship. So I just want to highlight that. And I think so many of these student rentals, I don't have numbers. I did try to get that at one time from Kevin, but I believe that the majority of these are absentee landlords. Of that percentage, of that 30-something%.
My son was the guy up the street, so.
Sure. Yeah.
So some of the things to expand the ADUs, these garage apartments, carriage houses, which I think you've done a very good job. You guys have done a very good job. Broadcast done a very good job allowing for that. Basement apartments, garage apartments. Some of them perhaps waiving additional parking requirements is something that helps them, allows them to do it by right rather than having permission to do it. That could be something to duplexes, triplexes, the HOAs, like we were talking about, I really think that is a step in the right direction. I know Jim, when we went out taking classes out there, the guy says, "Oh, you're attainable housing problem? Giant apartment buildings. That's your as dense as possible." But we want to balance it. Nobody wants that.
That's the wrong kind of capital too. That capital is just going to soak. You're paying out 20% returns or more to private equity for so much of that capital. They're going to take their Class A apartments to Class C's in 15 years. And I don't think the borough is actually in the end going to be ask Eli or ask any of these guys for them to pencil even. They're not not that they're making a ton. I mean, they're making money, but just for them to pencil on these big apartment buildings, they're not lower than any of the numbers you just gave up here. Put up there. A 1-bedroom at Burger King is still going to be astronomical. And it's large part because of the capital that we're paying for it. Somebody building, an ADU with their HELOC loan, totally different story.
And I do think that added duplex and triplex and cottage cores, I think they're,
step in the right direction. And Jim, you gave me that information about the project where you were working on that requires 10 to 15% of all projects to provide the attainable dwellings, 85% of market rate, and same quality and access to amenities. I mean, that's one of the things that I think of. You don't want to have a second-class housing, second-class apartment, whatever it happened to be in that building. To single out others at once, and then that it also had a sunset. That it would go away. You could go back to market rate after 10 or 15 years or whatever that happens. some of the undeveloped, underused sites. You know, one of the things I was sort of joke about with, you know, my friends and family and some of the students that I still get in front of is that parking lots are gonna go away. We're all going to be autonomous vehicles, and you know, we're not gonna own records or supermarkets anymore. We're not gonna own a private car that's gonna automatically drive you around. You're gonna have a service. You're gonna press a button on your phone, and a vehicle's gonna pull up right in front of you. Parking lots are gonna be a thing of the past. This could be an opportunity for us to use some of the parking lots in the borough, which will pave over, pave over the parking lot and bring back paradise. You know, song. But you know, parking lots are you know, in 20 years from now, right? You know, are going to be thin. So
I've definitely heard that narrative. I just want to say that if they're municipally owned parking lots, so rather than just selling them, just have like be intentional about when that time comes, because everybody's saying that time's going to come, probably won't come. Be intentional about it because there is an opportunity to try to approach the right developer.
absolutely. So developer fees, state grants, federal grants, private partnership. You know, there's a million ways to go with this. I can put together an ordinance to you know, require it. You know, we do have some things, but I you know, think we decide, you know, what we want to do and how we want to approach this. And go from there. So it requires something.
It's tough because I mean, there is tax credit developments which are affordable and they're subsidized by tax credits for whether it's federal, state, or county. And then there's market rate, and in between is that attainable housing. I think to target that, that's really those first-time home buyers or somebody trying to downsize. And if they're stuck in a larger home, they can't downsize because they can't. They're losing so much ground by leaving their present house to go buy it. But I think the idea of adding the potential of housing types and those densities, whether it's the triplex, the quads, 12 units or something, and then maybe relaxing those parking.
Right. Even one of the in the HOA having a few of the smaller houses. There are smaller houses.
But there might
Yeah.
Well, there's micro units too that are basically a studio, and so basically to provide something less than 1 square. You can go to what's it, Cambridge Hill? What's on those down there? There's Cambridge Hall. Their 1 bedrooms are 440 square feet.
So that's like that's market right now.
Yeah, I'm just saying what square footage is. But if you start looking at, it's just that the perception is everyone's looking for more and more square foot, bigger kitchen, bigger bath. There are some requirements that have to be met.
And I'm sorry to bring back this other issue, but when he was talking about not feasible for Wayne Hall, it's not feasible for Wayne Hall because they can't put suites. That was what.
Okay.
But you know, to go back to
But Schmidt Hall adjacent is still there style, but it's still, and you're correct, it offers a lesser price option.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you're a student there, the housing prices would be how much?
Yeah.
Now, there are people packing up already.
I know, but we've started out to, you want to?
No, this is mine too. The Hyde Overlay District.
Oh, this is your thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I am happy to push it to the next one.
we go to work, why don't we do a work session?
Yeah.
All in favor of not hearing Matt speak?
Anymore?
Anymore.
Can I make one comment?
You don't
I
wanna
will not be here at the work session. But I was talking to a friend of mine, planning commission, and on Ardmore. And I guess Ardmore is something that's like the intersection of height and affordable by saying, kind of similar to what you said, but they said, builder, you can build a little bit higher if those units are affordable, something along that.
FAR.
What,
That's another thing.
How? Oh, did they, just say, I can't remember the
FAR? What's,
Floor area ratio, it would be a way to emphasize construction, but it's not really the tying attainability to height, which is what Jim had on.
Right.
So Jim has a little.
Right, because mine is.
so you because.
we got that as a.
But as they are.
Very good. Okay, well, that being said, anything else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Anybody second? Second. Thank you.
Bill, we need to do